Good morning. I'm sitting here out of town with my wife. Took a couple of days to slip away and get some time together, quiet. But I want to keep our morning moments up, and so I'm just in the dining area of a little room we rented, and I just want to remind you about Sunday. Don't forget to be praying for Sunday. Pray. The work of God has got to go on, and God's love for people is never wavered, and the circumstances of government and circumstances of health and all those things, those don't change the love of God for sinners, and those don't change the necessity for people to be born again. And as a church, we can't forget how very important it is that people hear of Christ, that children grow up knowing God, and whether it be our own children, in my case, my grandchildren, or the kids who ride our buses, every one of them matters so much to the Lord. And so I hope you'll pray about our weekend. Pray for our state and for our leaders. I'll mention that in a moment a little bit. But for our federal government, our state government, our local government, county ordinances and rules and things people put together, those things are just vital. And we need God to work in the hearts of these people. And so anyway, I hope you'll take some time to, on purpose, pray for the lost and pray for wisdom. This is new to me and our staff as we try to organize this drive-in church thing. How do we get the gospel out clearly? How do we deal with people one-on-one? How do we do this? How do we do an invitation and all this kind of thing? So look, I hope you'll be at church. Now some of you, your health and such, you probably need to be home, and that's between you and the Lord. You figure that out. But I hope you'll watch all the services online. Pray for your church, support it financially, support it in prayer. But also, if you can get out, drive into these services and be a part of us gathering together. It's a statement to the community. When cars go down that mission trail and they see a parking lot packed full of people, and they can't even see me from where the street is down there. I'm far enough away, but they see that, they know something's going on. They see the big banner, drive-in church. That's a hint. Hey, maybe I ought to do that. And so if you can be at church, drive in, be a part of the service, and pray. Pray while you're there, and pray for God's blessing. We're going to be in Proverbs chapter 30 in just a minute, but I want to just get a couple things to you this morning. And my wife and I'll be back for the weekend, and we'll be back probably by Friday, but at least Friday sometime. But Saturday and Sunday we'll be around. But I want to remind you again, if you need anything, please call me, call the staff. We want to be a blessing in any way we can. We want to support and help each other. And then don't forget our the gospel to every door. Pray about helping them. Now, I thank the Lord for your faithful giving, just keeping our budget met. But the idea of, if we can't knock on every door, let's spend a little extra money and get a quality gospel tract into every door. And we're raising money right now. I'll give you some reports on Sunday where that is, if I have the numbers in. But we're going to get the first chunk, which is several thousand homes right around the church. And if we have enough money, we'll go a little further. And so just as God leads in your life. Hey, I wanted to mention our twin Beal boys, Titus and Kennedy, had a birthday. I think yesterday, this is the last couple of days. And happy birthday, Titus and Kennedy. What a great family, Caleb and Beth Beal. And Catalina Roberts, many of you would know her and her husband. Their family's been coming for a long time. So thankful. Happy birthday. Barry and Cheryl Anderson's anniversary. What a great thing. I remember doing their wedding in the tent, and it was, if I remember right, it was even maybe rainy weather, but what a dear couple, and I love them, and they've been friends of ours. I remember Cheryl as a high schooler when we started our church, and what a blessing, and what faithful people these two are, how good and encouraging they are to me, and I hope you'll be good to them. And if you cross their path, or send them a note, tell them happy anniversary. And Gary and Rocky Mowry, we met the Mowrys knocking on doors, and I believe Gary had just gotten saved somewhere. Rocky got saved knocking on doors, started coming to church, and what a wonderful family. Just the best of kids. and servants. Gary and Rocky are such servants. Wow, I love the folks that make up our church. Looking at Proverbs chapter 30 with me, you notice in Proverbs 30, God often violates political correctness. And this old vile world, if this corrupt, demonic world does not get offended once in a while at someone, then we're not walking clean. If I don't bother people a little bit, how can light not offend darkness? How come righteousness not offend evil and shame? And of course, we're going to cross paths with the world. And of course, a family seeking to honor God is going to once in a while offend the relatives. And I just recently spoke on lest we should offend. We don't want to offend. We want to seek to be a blessing and encouragement, but at the same time, we're not going to ignore God and His Word to please this old vile, corrupt, shameful world that can't even figure out the most common things of decency and propriety. But God does that on occasion. There's a word in here in Proverbs 30, brutish. It basically means stupid. And of course, we don't think stupid's an appropriate word, so call them brutish if you want to. But look, if you would, there at Proverbs 30 and verse 2. Surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not the understanding of a man. So what makes this guy brutish and lacking understanding? Well, he defines it. And he's talking about himself. And I think maybe past tense, my past life or what I have been, or maybe he is still in this state of stupidity and a lack of understanding. But he tells you, look at verse 3 and verse 4, I neither learned wisdom nor have the knowledge of the holy, who hath ascended up into heaven or descended, who gathereth the winds in his fist, and who hath bound the waters in a garment, who hath established all the ends of the earth. What is his name and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? Well, if you look at verse 4, he's asking a rhetorical question. Who is it that ascends up into heaven or descends? Who gathers the wind in his fist? Who is it that established or laid out the ends of the earth? What is his name and what is his son's name? Well, everybody knows the first part's God. Boy, those poor Jewish people, what is his son's name? It's a struggle for a Jewish person to be confronted with this passage, because it means God's got a son. Rats, that throws a wrench in the Jewish faith. And of course, for us, we know he has a son. His name's Jesus. And isn't it great to have the Bible over and over validate your faith and reassure your faith? But here in verse 2, he says, I'm more brutish than any man, have not the understanding of a man. Why? Well, one thing in verse 4, because he doesn't know anything about God and he doesn't know anything about Jesus. That makes you stupid. And you can like that or lump it. And if you don't like that vocabulary already, it makes you brutish. But he says, look at verse 3, I neither learned wisdom nor have the knowledge of the holy. What else makes this person a brutish person? Well, they don't have any wisdom and they don't have the knowledge of the holy. They don't understand holiness. Now, are we not in a culture right now that doesn't understand does not understand holiness? We can't figure out what gender to marry. We're rewriting birth certificates where you don't assign gender at birth, and you have to decide that later when they figure out what they are. We've got a generation of people who don't understand basic morals. They don't understand theft and the work ethic, that you ought to work for what you get. We don't understand it. Charity is me giving to someone. Charity is not my government taking from me so they can give to someone. That's called socialism and communism. Charity is I love somebody and I want to give to them. That's my business. I take what's mine. Socialism takes what's mine as a government and does something, whatever, and lines the pockets of politicians. But he says a brutish man, a guy with no understanding. He doesn't understand basic holiness. What is right and what's wrong? How can we watch the filth on TV and not see the unholiness of it all? Look, we're in a messed up culture today, and we need to understand these things. So in summary, if a person doesn't know who God is, doesn't know who God's son is, if a person doesn't understand holiness, and if a person doesn't have, in verse 2, doesn't have wisdom. Well, what's wisdom? Wisdom is the end result of a given action, or knowing the end of behavior. And our culture today, our political culture, wants to spend and get into trillions of dollars of debt. Any amount of wisdom at all tells you that is going to self-destruct. You can't just keep spending what you don't have. That's wisdom. Well, just thinking about our government, we have a governor today who he fits all of these things. He has no wisdom. He has no understanding. He has no knowledge of God. He has no knowledge of God's Son. He doesn't understand holiness. His moral character is a cesspool. His whole political alignment is anti-God, anti-Christ, anti-morality, anti-family, anti-home, Christ-centered, the Judeo-Christian ethics that built our nation. He doesn't understand American constitutionalism. The guy, and yet this man is telling us our church is not essential. That right there makes him brutish. The church is essential enough. Christ gave his blood to purchase the church. And now we've got a governor who says daycare centers can meet because they are essential, but churches can't meet because they're not essential. And I'll just throw this out. We need to put pressure on our governor and on our Riverside County supervisors. We need to put pressure on mayors, and they need to be written and called to and tell them church is essential. And 50 million Bible-believing people gave their lives throughout the Dark Ages for their church and for their faith. And for us to allow, I understand, few weeks for the government they're trying to figure this virus out, what we can't do. Well, we're many weeks into it. We're crushing our economy. And they don't have any answers yet. Certainly in California, they're kicking the can of opening churches up. And it's not just churches, it's good common men and women and their businesses being destroyed. We have a governor and government in California that does not understand, they have no wisdom. That's understanding the end result of their action. They have no knowledge of the holy. They don't know God. They don't know his son Jesus. And as a people, we need to care. Another point of this thing of the knowledge of the holy and of wisdom and understanding. Who is a stupid person? Your support of social media. Do you know our main social media sites? They are taking down anything that is politically incorrect. During President Trump's campaign, when he was running for the White House, the main social media sites, they were not letting people post things that were pro-conservative, pro-life, pro-church. And they're pulling that down. And when I came to the point in my life when I realized these social media sites are cesspools of iniquity, they hate that which is right, and they spew out vile and filthy things. And I'm not saying there's not good people in it. I'm saying, why are good people on it when we are helping these billionaire people maintain their lifestyle of anti-God, anti-American, anti-church corruption, and our participation in their activities endorses it and pays for it. And you got to figure that stuff out. But if you want to understand godliness and wisdom, he says there in verse 2, I am more brutish than any man. I have not the understanding of a man. Why? I don't understand wisdom or the knowledge of the holy. Quick story. If you heard my evening post, I mentioned this godly family. But here's a young man who his parents marveled at him at 3 years old. He's reading. At 4 and 5 years old, he's learning Latin and Greek. By the time he's 6th, 7th grade in our academic standard, he knows multiple languages, and his dad is a Anglican, I believe, a pastor. And here this young man in the early American history is just he's brilliant of mind, but corrupt in life. He chases after the theater and just runs from. He wants nothing to do with God. He becomes an assailant, arguing with his parents about the scripture, proving the scriptures can't be true, and oh, how smart he was. And you know what happened to him? If you heard the story of Adoniram Judson, he ends up getting saved, coming back to his parents. He ends up coming back to his parents, a broken man as a young man, and begs them to explain to him the simple truth of salvation. And this humble mother and father, what made them special? They understood the knowledge of the holy. They had wisdom. They knew who God was. They knew who God's Son was. And they took their common knowledge, their commonality, and they took this brilliant son of theirs and they showed him the simplicity of Christ. Adoniram Judson saved, ends up being one of the greatest missionaries in history. It was common people that made the difference. Let's do this. Let's determine to be the common, humble people who have enough sense to learn wisdom and understanding from the scriptures, and that we might then learn about God and learn about his Son and just the simplest things of life. Pray for your country, pray for our leaders, and let's seek after that which is holy and right. We'll see you tomorrow morning, and then of course over the weekend. Pray for a great Saturday and Sunday. God bless you. Have a great day.